Camille.
Girl. Mm-mm. Wait, let me do this. I always come in wrong.
You always come in wrong?
Yeah, I come in hot and then go. Hold on.
Okay, everybody got themselves the actual live muted.
Okay. Hold on, let me get my light right. So I'm like new to this Zoom.
Yay! Join Zoom.
This only like my second or third Zoom.
Yeah, they can be really annoying, but they're actually all we have at this point. So we're doing what we gotta do. But yeah, so I use it a lot. I was using it already. But you know, I knew I was right through my podcast, and you know, we were supposed to schedule you for the next podcast, and then Armageddon
came.
And today I was gonna try and do a Zoom, but my staff meeting was so like engaged, inspired, thoughtful, and so I didn't get to do the podcast. But I was like, I'm just gonna record a podcast anyway and have something going so that we can have this conversation. And so I have my friend Quinton, and I'm just going to check on one thing because I didn't take down the Facebook Live. But, you know, everybody, you should still be able to hear the live, but you won't be able to see them until I post it. And again, I might not because we keep bouncing in and out of the actual video. Quinton was here and now he's gone, but that's okay. We can hear you. But so just let me do the little drop for the podcast itself. The podcast is called PrymeCast, records every single Thursday, normally at noon. This is our apocalyptic edition. And we are doing, let me gallery view so that we're three squares. Okay, that's cuter. So this is the apocalyptic edition. And, you know, normally we try to keep it extremely uplifting and appropriate. And we say our words all the way to the end on the podcast. That's what we've been doing. But we got a president on TV making up names and words. So I think it's fair that we just bring our authentic selves to this conversation. Cuss words are allowed. This does not belong to the job that pays me. This belongs to the business I own. So therefore, it is fair to cuss. It is fair to feel a feeling and say and call a thing, as Auntie would say. But, you know, today we are just having a conversation as a touch point. And I think when I decided I was going to go ahead and record, it was because during my staff meeting, I was sensing my team was feeling so disconnected. We are an arts organization, but we are in every neighborhood, every community doing art for free. So a lot of our team members, their only connection is doing that kind of thing. Some of them are introverted technically. So like they're not going to be at the club. They're not going to be at a party. They're not going to be in social settings with just regular folks. But they would love to be anywhere where you're actually making art and teaching art together. Tactile learning is their style. And so they're struggling. And we met on Google Hangout today. It was supposed to be just a touch point, like for an hour. Them faces said to LaShondra that we needed more than an hour. So I decided to be responsive and just blow through what I thought I was going to do for the day. And it was a good call. And so when we did that, I had left the internet and I didn't look at the internet and I was focusing on having conversations with them. But then I come back to the internet after y'all had the whole day by yourselves.
Girl.
And first of all, it's all Black people's fault in Milwaukee that there's SARS. Oh, I'm sorry. It's not SARS now. Wait, it's other disease. But every disease is always our fault. So that's the first thing that I returned to is...
Did you see the new movie premiere?
What movie?
Pandemic.
Oh, no. So I've been seeing that commercial feeling like they should have pulled it off the shelves. They would never. So now we've got Pandemic coming out. We've had this movie at least 5 times. Because remember Contagion?
No, not pandemic.
Oh, there's a joke version?
Yes, girl.
I'd like to see that one.
You have to see the trailer.
I haven't seen the trailer. See, Camille, this is what I'm talking about. You're supposed to be ready with the trailer and play it, is what you're going to do.
Okay, so I had to get the pandemic. Maybe,
I'll find the pandemic one, because I thought you were talking about the actual pandemic that was and is scheduled to come out.
Oh, no, the pandemic movie actually came out. It's actually a documentary series on Netflix. It actually premiered on January 22nd, 2020. And the first U.S. case that was reported here of COVID-19 was January 20th, which was really interesting to me. Yeah, and so if you watch it, I'm in like episode 3 of the series. It's like they basically were telling us about this now without saying it, which is really interesting. And so
I don't want to watch anything serious.
It's just really interesting. It just gives you some insight, but it's good to watch, in a sense, what they say, to know, I guess, just a little bit about the process of things and how things work too. Like, it's really interesting. So one thing cool that you might not didn't know, like, so you know that I had to go to summer school to get my degree or whatever from King, but one of the papers that I had to write, well, both papers, I had to write 2 papers, one on global warming and one on viruses. And so once I did those 2 papers, when I graduated, I've been following like the things that I wrote the paper on. And one of the 2 things that was really interesting to me out of the papers that I wrote with the global warming is I wanted to see like what would end up happening, like with the ice caps melting and where it would get to. I wanted to see like would it be warmer on average, you know, because that's what we were predicting with the paper. So that was real interesting. And then like a pandemic or like viruses and how they work and how they go, and like that was always like fascinating to me, that the CDC just like kept these diseases like in the refrigerator, and like I had all of these types of theories, but I was just really interested when we would have like these outbreaks. So this is like something that I like read about, like the Spanish flu and these things, and I've seen things happen, but this is crazy to me. So I'm like flipping out in all kinds of ways. It's just interesting to me. And then it's just crazy, you know, too, at the same time, because nothing has ever happened like this.
No, this is not in our lifetime have we experienced anything like this. And I just have so many, like, first of all, I am not going to be a conspiracy theorist with your Hotep guy who had on the whole USA outfit that was talking on the internet all crazy. I'm not joining him. But there are a lot of concerns that I just in general have about the way that this narrative has kind of been set up. And I'm really glad. So Camille Mays is my sister in the struggle. For those listening to the podcast that don't know her, we're just having a conversation. Camille is the founder of Peace Gardens. Camille is a community warrior here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And just because you didn't do no intro, you just started talking to me like talking.
I did, right?
I'm sure put your narrative out there for the podcasting universe, because I don't know who listens to it. So, and they also may not even be in Milwaukee. So there's that. But that is my sister Camille talking about her interest in pandemic and also global warming. Same interest over here. And then I also want to intro my boy Quinton Cotton on here. Doctor? Are we doctor yet?
2 more semesters.
About to be Dr. Quinton Cotton, who, and I'm gonna let you talk about your work and what you do a little bit. And I also want to say that you two don't know each other, but you absolutely should. Quinton Cotton, I want you to first intro what are you on right now? Like let's take a pause from the pandemic. I just want to know what you've been doing, because you're up in Madison doing great things that we often forget that you're up there being a Milwaukeean implant.
Yeah. So right now I'm getting a PhD in clinical and translational science. My research focuses on the experience of African American dementia caregivers.
Mm,
I'm especially interested in understanding how our caregivers manage the period of crisis. And
mhm.
so if you can imagine, we in our community know what it's like to be poet and Poe. And so when things get really tough, when the wheels fall off completely for us, because we've been so resilient and we've been so resourceful and we've been able to handle so much that that takes a toll on us.
Yeah.
And so what I want to understand is when things get really, really bad for persons who are caretaking among the dementia population, how do they manage their lives
Mhm,
and still stay sane?
mhm.
So my dissertation research work really focuses on that. Ultimately, this is a topic that brings together several things that I'm really interested in. I am unapologetic and I'm extremely interested and passionate about improving the life conditions of persons from the African diaspora and specifically Black folks in the United States. Um, I'm interested in health equity. I'm interested in resource distribution and issues of justice. And I'm interested in that being structured in a way in our society that gives us opportunities to be healthy, happy, and whole. And
Mhm.
so this dissertation work is a reflection of some of the earlier work that I've done in Milwaukee, but ultimately, um, all of these themes that I care about in terms of improving the lives of Black folks, this dissertation really is just another example of my commitment to our people.
Dope, dope. And I didn't know what your topic was for your dissertation, because when you transitioned, I was still in the practice of the Life Course Initiative,
Mhm.
um, and the wrap of that, and then I moved. So I think it's really good to hear the target of your PhD, and I'm super proud of you because that is such an important topic. I helped to care for my partner's mother as she was transitioning, and that was tough. Uh, and it does completely change the way that you have to live your life.
Yep.
No matter what's going on, you got to figure that out. Um, so I am super glad that you were available for this season and time, because I think the conversation that is important to me is just the irony of us always being pointed to as the problem when we did not create the problem. And so, what I want to speak very specifically to is this narrative that Milwaukee continues to have, with the way that the Journal Sentinel specifically, but also our news media outlets, love to say African American community the most impacted by fill in the blank.
Yep.
Um, and I think one of the things that we had in common when we were doing this work together is we kept having to remind people that already know that Milwaukee's 46% Black. So anytime you measure the data on a
Oh Lord Jesus, there's so many of us, Lord. Yeah.
Lord help, like
Yeah.
every time that data is going to say more Black people are impacted by this if your petri dish
Yeah.
is all the way half Black.
Yeah.
And it is not in any way, shape, or form the fault of Black people born in America that any of the viruses that we are dealing with right now exist. And I think that in and of itself is the truth that I just needed to say out loud for other people to hear. And we couldn't have been responsible for creating this problem. But you know what bothers me the most, y'all,
So,
is this ain't the first time we've said this. The Journal Sentinel, we constantly have told them, stop publishing this title. Stop saying this about every health epidemic, because those epidemics are only being measured in a finite group of people that are already the largest percentage of your pool. Your data is never going to show up where it goes, all of a sudden it spiked in the Hmong community. It's not big enough to spike anywhere but Black. And so those are the things that I want to have real conversations about. Like, what are we going to do to create a new media? What are we going to do to help Black people not respond to the media and believe it based on a title? Because that's the one that's the most scary to me. People that jump out on the ledge and say, see Black people, see, and it be Black people. That's the part that wears me the most. Black folks will jump on that. Yep, see, I told you it's the Black people. We just can't get along. What does that have to do with a pandemic that didn't start?
See, all this Black on Black crime is spreading this COVID.
Yeah.
It is amazing to me to see how easily we can jump into the narrative that's been created about us and regurgitate it as if we said it first.
I'm trying to not conspiracy theory this. Okay, so this my thing. Like, however we got here right now, whether it's up for question or not, we here. And we got to figure out how to make people understand that it's not a game, because I don't know how hard it has to hit for people to understand that. And so that's where I'm at right now, because when we went out to get Jakari's prescription yesterday, it looked like a regular busy day.
Mm.
You know, and so like I do understand that people work. I do understand that certain things are open, but everybody is like out. And then like it's a lot of park spaces. Okay, people are saying they want to go exercise, they want to do this, they want to do that. It's a lot of domestic violence. It's a lot of, you know, just stuff, depression. Like we was just talking about caregiving. People need to get some space. Okay, but it's like plenty parks. It's not just McGovern and the lakefront. Like everybody went to them 2 parks. Like that was the only 2 parks in the city or whatever. So it's like, I don't know. And we went, you know, to the store, and it's like people just not like spacing. And I know it's like you not used to this. And I'm trying to keep all of these things in mind. Like people just aren't used to it. Like I'm conditioned to this because of my mom. She was immunocompromised. So I had to like do this stuff. I had to like live this way. I was a CNA, you know, so it's like embedded in me to do some of this stuff. But like to the everyday person, I'm like a germaphobe, you know, so it's just trying to educate our people to not spread it first, and then get into like, I mean, we already got disparities in our community more than, you know, the other neighborhoods. So it's like this stuff is going to hit us differently. So we got to like be proactive first and then kind of address these other issues and stuff. But it's all us here, but it's like, it's so many different problems and ways we got to attack this. But we first got to educate people, like get them to understand. And then it's funny how they could take one part of the media and then dismiss the whole other part, right?
I mean, that's always the case.
Like this whole part is the truth and the light, but the whole other part about stay your ass in the house, fuck that, right?
Yeah. For me, I'm just looking at all of this and I'm just like, man, are we really this jacked up and it's stupid? And for me, I'm just seeing so many different layers of this. For me, there's the layer of, do we really value our own life? And how does that manifest itself in the choices that we make for ourselves, our loved ones, and our communities?
Yeah.
Second thing that stands out to me is our mental health. Mm-hmm. Are we okay saying, I'm scared and I don't know what to do?
Mm-hmm.
The third thing that stands out to me is, why didn't these Black churches close before? And so the role of religion and public health, the role of religion and community organizing, the role of religion in Black life. And then I could go on and on, but there are a bunch of themes that when I look at what's happening, what I am seeing is certainly a need for leadership.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we have had leadership, one, that is inconsistent, two, perhaps not trustworthy, three, not present. And so I think that in times that we are in, although people, are smart, I think that we all could use someone who's that beacon of light, but someone who also that has accurate information about what COVID-19 is, someone who has an appropriate response, a public health strategy about, over the next 2 weeks, over the next 2 months, over the next year, here is what we can do in our communities to decrease risk and exposure. What is a risk? What is an exposure? And so we just don't only need leadership, we need leadership who is informed and knowledgeable. People who know something about science, And so I think that we're just in these sort of interesting times. And for me, the biggest takeaway is we've allowed it. We've allowed it. We control what happens to us. And we don't even see that. We don't even get it. That's the crazy part. That's the crazy part to me. Vote these ninjas out of here. Establish a new political party. Woo! Establish your own platform. Universal basic income, universal health care. The list goes on and on. Let's have a conversation about capitalism versus public health. And so I think that what this is doing, in my mind, is it's putting everything on the table for us to see and for us to observe. And if we can't take care of ourselves, if we refuse to take care of ourselves, what does that say about us?
What does that
So
say?
I'm hoping that we get fed up enough to say that this stops here.
That's so good. And I want to say the strongest point I heard is this really literally is capitalism versus public health in real time. This is what it looks like. Because when you look at what happened with the bailout package, there is absolutely nothing specific to nonprofits. The government institution funding that was received will only funnel into the states, which will then become administrative. And there are loans for small businesses. So I'm not just giving you money to replace this my bad thing that you didn't create. I am giving you money that you are now in debt to me to pay me back. That doesn't feel like a solution. That feels like a national payday loan. That's what it feels like.
It feels like capitalism.
Right.
It's a Ponzi scheme. The
Fact.
same Ponzi scheme they've been doing, they just playing us even more this time.
Yeah.
They telling us, they giving us fake money that they don't even have. Then charging us interest on that. It ain't even there. They scammers.
And that is why I cannot and I could not, when I saw us having the response that we've had to people being outside be a fine, and pressing that into young adults and teens, because young adults and teens have never not been rebellious. young adults and teens have never not bucked authority. But if they had never bucked any authority ever at all, we would all still be dealing with slavery. So, and we're still dealing with slavery. Let me just be honest with myself and with the rest of us. But the fact that bucking authority happens at that age is speaking directly to the age that's holding on to power that needs to let it go, so that the people who are young enough to lead can have that opportunity. And what we have, the leadership void you spoke directly to, Quinton, is really based in that. Because leadership is a spirit that these young people have, an energy inside of them, and they know they're leaders. They just don't know what they're supposed to lead. So they lead nothingness. So that if they sitting together, they are not allowed to go to work, to school. The couple of them that went and got a job and got their lives together and tried to get out of trouble, all of them got laid off. They was first because their jobs was due. So now they all sitting at home. They had went and got a job. They tried to do right. And now they've got this rage.
Yeah, and then like
they for it. Like I have had challenges. You know, my babies is upstairs losing their minds.
And then like you got this young old thing, you know. So like somebody our age range brought up like how older people are always like the young people this and the young people that, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, when you project it as it could affect older people and this, that, and the other, and you don't say it could affect everybody, you make it seem as if certain people wouldn't be affected by it, and others like they basically, when it came here, it was just like, oh, if you over 60, be careful. If you younger, you'll make it. But that's not really the case.
Yeah.
So they started off with a false narrative, and now all these young people are getting sick, babies, young college kids, you know, people are dying, and they're like, oh, what happened? They were perfectly healthy, but no one ever said that they couldn't be a victim. Like, it was a bad narrative put out.
I mean,
and so then
that goes back to the science thing. One of the things that capitalism will never allow us to do is to admit we don't know exactly what we're dealing with. And public health says we're still studying this, but here's what we know about viruses as a whole. Yeah. Okay? So if we've classified this as a virus, we know what viruses do scientifically that we should prepare for. But viruses change, things change. And so not being able to say we're still learning, like that's how the narrative gets set up false, right? If you are telling people we are not sure exactly what this is, but here are some things we recommend. And then you're identifying, oh, old people. They're the ones that are most vulnerable. The older people are the most vulnerable of all illnesses in general. So that's just something that we know from the status of viruses, right? We know that they're always going to be vulnerable. But when our narratives are coming from someone who is not taking all their talking points, Quinton and I know this one real good, baby. You give a legislator talking points with data and information, and they decide to keep boiling them points down to shorter and shorter and shorter because they've decided people aren't smart enough to digest 2 sentences. So let's make it 1. But that second sentence was so important to what the first one said. And so I give you talking points, right? Coming from a whole group of people who sat down and said, all these things are necessary, right? And then I give it to the person who is in control of marketing and in control of communications. And they say, you know, people are just, they don't have enough attention to listen to that. Let's just take 3. That is the classic approach for the communications person. And then they give it to a legislator. And that legislator paraphrases the living daylights out of them 3. Doesn't nail them. And you removed a lot of the meat that they should have shared as the voice that we are told to trust. So you have not done the good job because you've decided for the public what we're capable of intake, what knowledge we're able to store. And that contributes to what we're seeing right now, because that's the way it's coming back from the young folks. And there are people that have talked about it like, well, I thought we had a population problem. Let's just deal with it. If the old people are the only ones going to get it, we ain't got nothing to worry about. That was the first immediate message that I was hearing from the public around, well, old people were going to die anyway, so let's let them die. Like, I was just like, this is horrifying.
It's so morbid, right?
It was horrifying to hear that. But if you take out the whole narrative and you only say that one sentence, it allows people to turn that sentence into whatever they want.
Yeah, I think two things. I think that we're giving these people too much credit. They're actually not that smart. And so that's a part of it. And not only are they not smart, I think that working with that are people who are greedy and they don't care.
That.
And so when you put those things together, what happens is you have folks at the top who have decision-making capacity, who are bullies, and who are greedy.
Yes.
And you have smart people behind them who are pushovers. When you put those things together, what happens is any wisdom within a strategy or message does not come across because it's filtered through that other lens. I think that is the problem, that we have allowed ourselves to be guided by these type of persons. And so for me, that's a more fundamental issue about how we choose our leaders.
Yes.
And the expectations that we have of our leaders, and also accountability. Where are the checks and balances to be like, that's not cool. That stops here.
Y'all, I want to add, because the live is still going, so there's people commenting. I want to read some of these comments. Tayana Imafa just said how brilliant you are, Quinton. Tayana is one of your fans. Me too. Adrian Spencer, hey sis. Jacqueline Ward had a couple good comments. I'm going to scroll down to Adrian Spencer mentions the basketball courts are full and MPS has no curriculum that transfers home due to lack of one-on-one Chromebooks. All right, my children are not in public schools anymore. No shade, no tea, but I'm just saying my kids is going to school. My son, when he didn't show up to class on the internet, he got I got a text message. And what Camille said is not one or the other. I'm sorry, and this may come out of context because they were typing while y'all were talking. We know that there's a pandemic. We know it's a health crisis, but I feel what Fiery Phoenix I am saying and Dr. Cotton is saying, not denying the health crisis. They're different continuum that's about history and longevity of our people. So part of that, I think you got some moves around, you know how it is on Facebook, do an edit if you want to, but I think what Sister Jacqueline Ward was saying is basically that it's not one or the other, it's actually both of those issues. And I love that Quinton called it layered, because this is a very layered issue. Jacqueline Ward also said, we don't know what's truth though. We don't know if people were not sick in the beginning, and this is a man-made test on several levels. Hey, Emily. Emily is in New Orleans. This is the last comment, then I'm going to let y'all go. Emily Mullenberg is in New Orleans, my friend. Hey, girl. Impacted also in the restaurant industry. She is a wonderfully fashionable food service professional. But in New Orleans Public Works,
Hi, Emily.
In New Orleans, Public Works took down all the basketball hoops due to non-compliance with the social distancing mandate. We've had that happen before. And the thing I fear is let's make sure that we put them back when the pandemic is over, if that is the approach we decide to take. I think, the basketball court issue is a big challenge. America's chickens sometimes when they come home to roost. they hurt us just as much as they hurt everyone else. And I think that's the sentiment that I have around it. I have empathy. You know, my daughter losing her mind. She's 19. She just in her room. She ain't going nowhere. It's like, this is not normal for someone at that age. Camille, come on, girl, bye. We was outside every chance we could get. When
yeah.
We
and
we have $6 to rub together, but I bet you we'll have $1 burger from over at the McDonald's.
Right. Look, we was doing something.
And so, like, you know, as much as, and I've had to be a mom and not, you know, allow for the conversation to be a conversation, because I have empathy for how you feel, but it's bigger than just whether or not you will contract a virus. There are multiple reasons why you could end up with a fine that you can't afford to pay. You could end up arrested if you decide that you are angry enough at the system to buck back at it.
Indefinitely detained.
Yes. And detainment almost guarantees you exposure.
Right.
So,
indefinite, though.
Right. So, and I think as I'm thinking about, you know, in this conversation, it gets really like, and I love layers, because layers means no person is right or wrong. It means
right. It's
all
just
of
many factors
are at the table,
all of
and
them.
the people that are making the decisions they lack perspective. They have a perspective that is self-serving, and that is, if I don't restart this economy quickly, these people are going to turn on me. And that's the thing that's driving what's happening, is the detainment of the wealth. And, you know, we got all kinds of philosophies that are out here about what happens when you starve the poor. What do they eat? They eat the rich.
They kicked the door in.
Baby.
I'm waiting for that door to be kicked down, but one of the chatters mentioned something that I think is really important. She described what we are experiencing now as a man-made experiment.
Ma'am.
And I'm not quite sure what this chatter meant by that. I have some ideas, but I just want to reframe that a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think that this is an opportunity to observe our public health infrastructure. I think that certainly it's a natural experiment in terms of how we respond.
Mm.
I think this is really an opportunity for us to figure out, as a society, structurally, institutionally, what mechanisms, what levers are going to be appropriate to protect our health. What do our response systems look like? Are they adequate? Are they adequate for whom? And under what conditions? Who are they not adequate for? What are the barriers to adequacy for a public health response system? Mm-hmm. And so I think this idea of an experiment becomes important, not for the sake of somebody created this in a lab, you know, and they're trying to get us, but the idea of experiment being, we have the ability to observe, we have the ability to design an intervention, we have the ability to test, but more importantly, after we test, we learn.
That's right. That's right.
And we can retest.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll have a hypothesis. And so we can apply a scientific method to how we think about moving ourselves out of global outbreaks. So that was like one thing that was sort of sticking in my head. The other thing that's really resonating with me has to do, you know, we're talking about basketball courts and, you know, people are gardening and we got these, you know, barbecues that people are doing in sort of the winter and spring. And LaShondra mentioned this. You started this off by saying what artists were talking about is we need a deeper way to connect with each other. And are we okay connecting virtually? What does that look like? Do we know how to have community? And I'm even going to push that a little bit further and say, do we just know how to be with ourselves and our families?